when you see these pictures, whatever I say, there are going to be notes on the screen because I want this to be as fluid as possible, but they're bullets. I don't want you paying attention to the bullets because it's impossible to hear a speaker look at a photo and read. So I just want you to look at the photos because they are amazing, and just listen to what I have to say and forget the bullets, okay? I've been to so many of these presentations and they can become so confusing because there's too much on a screen. So just look at this, for example, this precious little orangutan who I'm looking at greater now than I did when I brought this picture over. Just look at the face and the eyes and the smile, and he's looking at his mother. And look at the hands, how they grab the tree, and look at the mother's extended hand to try to grasp the baby. And that's why these are such special animals. They've got such heart. So number one, welcome to the world of orangutans, and thank you for joining me on another great adventure. It's going to be a heartwarming journey to the world of the orangutans who live in Southeast Asia. Their indigenous homes are found along the equator in Southeast Asia. The presentation will first discuss the ideal world in which they once lived, to be followed by the real world today and the sad experiences that are threats to them. At some point later, they're not the only animals that are on this island of Sumatra and Borneo, but specifically we're dealing with Sumatra. And we'll get to meet other animals that are on this paradise island. So with that, we will continue. These are men of the ancient forest. Orangutan in Malaysian and Indonesian means man and forest. So they've taken up the name man of the forest. Their indigenous homes are now in Sumatra and Borneo, but they once lived in Asia, and we'll get into that momentarily. This is the primate tree of life, as you can see, and here are all the animals leading up to man. I did both of these because I thought the chart would, both charts would help. One of them may not be as clear as the other. If you take a look at 12 to 16 million years ago, you will see this is the primate tree of life. We begin with the orangutan, who came on the scene and evolved about 12 to 16 million years ago. Only has a DNA, as we talked about last time, of 97%. We move up the line to gorillas, and the gorillas have about 98%. And if you look on the other chart to the left, my left, the chimpanzee and bonobo are closer to man with about 98.2% DNA. And then we have man. What I found most interesting in my research was that somewhere along this development of the tree of life, the orangutan molecular research basically said that the color of the orangutans kind of filtered its way by molecular science to human beings, thus causing redheads. And those of you who know my husband, you'll get my point about that. I thought that was very funny. So the other thing is, even though the orangutan, which was first on the tree of life, was 97% of man's DNA, they're very, very smart and very much like man in their emotional ability and the way in which they evoke, their feelings, and they're wonderful mothers. So, of course, I'm telling you too much. We will move on. And, okay. So they started off, the orangutans, their original home was Asia. And the question is, how did they manage to get all the way from Asia down to the Malay Peninsula? And one of the slides that I had originally was of Pangea, and I decided to take it out, which was the original one continent that the supercontinent from which other continents broke apart. So you see all these islands here. I'm still trying, let me just see one thing now. Okay, you see all these different islands. They were all part of one original mass. And then as tectonic plates moved around, things broke up. So when you look at the Sunda shelf, it was above water, just like the Bering Strait. We're talking how long ago, but millions of years ago. So what would happen is that the orangs would manage to get all the way through Asia, across this Malay Peninsula, and everything was able, they were able to get to Borneo and then walk across the Sunda Shelf to the other islands. So they didn't swim. This is the way they got there. I'm going to show you this map to begin with, and it's going to have one purpose, and then later we're going to get back to it with a different perspective. Sumatra is the 6th largest island in the world, and it's just a bit larger than California. Borneo is a little bit larger than Texas. I just thought, you know, when you say 3rd largest island in the world or 6th largest, doesn't mean anything, but when you have something you can relate it to, it means something more. The picture that you see here, or the map that you see here, the red areas indicate the areas where orangutans live. And we will get into more detail about that. So just kind of keep an eye on that, but it will mean more to you later. So now we're meeting some of the orangutans and who they are. They're classified as critically endangered. I'm just looking here. About 200,000 orangutans roamed the islands about a century ago. And we take a look at the Bornean. Let me see if this is what I have to do. There are 104,700 Bornean, roughly, orangs at the moment. They have darker, longer faces, and they have protruding flanges, which are the cheek pouches. And then we come to Sumatran, which is critically endangered. At one point, the Bornean were not so critically endangered, but they are now. The third orang that was found in 1999, it was actually seen or discovered in 1997. And it was in the southern part of the island. If you look at the map to the right, you'll see a blue kind of elongated area, and that's Lake Toba. The Sumatran, okay, let me just go back one step. Okay, the Bornean orangutan lives on Borneo. The Sumatran lives on Sumatra along a bunch of other animals. So now we move on. All right, so if you take a look at this map, to the top of Lake Toba is the area in which the Sumatran orangutans live. South of the Lake Toba is where you're going to find this new character called the Tapanuli. They are the most critically endangered of all orangs. There are only 800 of them left. The reason I have the picture of this Chinese gentleman down on the left is because my granddaughter looked at this and she said, "Grandma, look at the male on the left, Tapuli and Tapanuli, and doesn't it remind you of a Chinese person from long ago with a long beard?" And I said, you know, you're probably right. So this is the newest breed, found in 1999. They were seen in 1970, but nobody, you know, looked at them any further. And then they appeared in 1999. The one to the left is the male, and to the right is the female. They have frizzier hair, and they have flatter and longer vocal cords, and they are much, much louder, and they can be heard all over the area than either their Sumatran or Bornean cousins. We're going to focus mainly in this report on the Sumatran orangutan. So you just look at him, and I'll look to the left. He is the largest, meaning orangutan are the largest of all arboreal apes. They're big, but they're so agile that they can climb trees, and that's what arboreal means. They have 97% of man's DNA as compared to chimps and gorillas. They can climb as high as 120 feet, and you saw the trees before and the trees behind you. They have reddish, shaggy coats. The males lead solitary lives, and they start to reproduce at about 15 or 20 years of age. They have a throat sac, and it's used to make very notable and recognizing call that echoes through the forest. And when I say solitary and reproduce, their job is to be heard by a female when they are ready to mate, and they come, and that's their job, to mate, and then off they go. They're not reliable fathers. It's up to the mothers, who are amazing mothers. So as I said a moment ago, that the males will not be seen in the forest with females. It's very rare because that's not, they just go off. They need to find places to eat and forage for food. But I'm going to show you a picture from the Smithsonian Zoo, just to give you an idea of size, relative size between male and female. Togetherness is in captivity because they're safer and they don't have, you know, the wild to have to separate and get food. And there's, as I said, they're safe. The female is about they're 2/3 the size of gorillas. The female's also 1/3 of the size of a male. On the right is the male, which I'm sure you figured. They have no tails. That's what a great ape is known for. The males are between 155 and 200 pounds. They average over 5 feet in height with very, very long arms if they're standing on the ground, which is not usual. Their arms are very long and can touch the ground. The female on the left is about 1/3 of the size of the male, between 90 and about 110 pounds, and they're about 4 feet tall. I don't know, just look at those faces. I'm always amazed by them. They have opposable thumbs, just like you saw in my report on gorillas. Their hands and their feet grab, as you saw the way the mother extended her hand to the baby in the first photo. They have amazing span, arm span, 7 feet spread. And you can see how they use their hands and their feet as second hands to grab. When you consider their weight, they really move around. We're talking about 200 pounds of agility, swinging through the forest, climbing. And the trees are, if you notice, the trees and the branches are not that thick. Where do they live? Well, the females build nests in the upper canopy of forest. It can be anywhere between 30 to 60 feet high. They can climb up to 100, 120 feet. They usually build nests in fruit trees, and they forage for food during the day when they're not resting. Their nests can be built, new nests can be built every single day, because as they have to roam the forest and find new places where there's food for them, they may have to move their nest. And they said that they can build a nest in a very, very short amount of time. They're very, very smart and very adept at doing that. Take a look at their diet. You see the orang climbing up with bananas. And there's a picture of a little baby, and the berries, bananas, lychees, figs, and mangoes. And they find water in tree holes and in the fruits. And if they do climb down, wherever there's any water available, in a river, in a stream, in a puddle, that's where they get it. But for the most part, they get their liquid intake from all the fruit that they eat and water that is accumulated in holes. Also, if you recall, in the last talk about gorillas and how they found ponds, and they, dig down into a certain kind of algae that they pull up that has medicinal qualities that keep them anti-inflammatories. So does the orang. This is called Dracaena cantillate. And what it is, it's a leaf that they find, that they chew. And I know this is not really clear, but the point will be made. I want you to see what they do with it, because talk about smart, and man needs to learn, and man is learning about these various different forest remedies, rainforest remedies. 1 second. He's chewing the leaf, and the white foamy inside of the leaf, he's rubbing on his elbows and shoulders. And, it's believed, like man, they get arthritis. And so some of these leaves are, being explored by pharmaceutical companies and saying, boy, they sure know something. And they've been seen to do this a lot. And I guess they like the taste of it too. All right, let us move on. They're very, very intelligent. They're born with the ability to reason and to think, and they're able to do amazing tasks, and they're very intuitive. And here's an example of the way in which orangs will take a stick and put it into a tree, and they have to bend the stick and actually know how to make a point out of it, to pull termites out of a tree. And the picture to the right was a hut that researchers used, and they left the saw out. And of course, they were within reasonable distance, just to see if the orangutan would have any clue what to do with the saw. And there are videos on YouTube if you ever want to look, but this is a photo of him I guess it's a she picking up the saw and knowing how to saw a piece of wood. Quite amazing. Okay. So now we're going to go into what is their life as a female, and what the female orangutan is like with a newborn. You can see this emotional intelligence they have. The mother looking down at the baby, and the baby looking at the mother. I mean, this is, I don't know how much more human you can get. The orangutans are big, but they have close to 8.5 month gestation, which is close to humans. The babies are 3.3 pounds at birth. They can be held in the palm of your hand. And there are 3 different stages of development, which we will talk about momentarily. This is about 0 to 3 months. The reproduction and lifespan, mothers first reproduce at about the age of 15, although they're ready at 8, but they mature, and their body tells them about 15 is the right time. They reproduce until about age 30, which means, and in a lifetime, they can go between 35 and 45 years, but they stop reproducing at 30. And they have only 3 births in a lifetime, as compared to gorillas and all the other animals. Like every 2 years, they're ready to mate and have another baby. So this is what makes them so amazing, about only 3 births. So there's between 8 and 10 year span between births. And as I said, lifetime, and the babies stay with them and grow with them as they age. So they first start off with being on the mother's chest. And then as they grow and we're moving on here. This is the next developmental stage where at about 2 years, they go from being held in the mother's chest to riding on her back. And then as we move further, the juveniles, oh, that was not what was supposed to stay. Well, it's a little blurry, but anyway, these are juveniles, and they begin to climb trees and search for their own food at about 4 years of age. So that's about, they begin to climb trees, they search for food, and they share. Then we go to the adolescent females. Again, they are, excuse me. Okay, this is a picture at the Brookfield Zoo. I did try to go in to get zoo pictures every once in a while because sometimes you can't find this type of setting in the wild. And here the females will often stay with their mothers and help with newborns. This is ages 7 to 10. When they are in the wild, they build nearby nests and stay with the mother, not directly in her nest, but they are with them. They are with the mother up to 8 to 10 years. And at that point, they grow old enough because we know that they're able to mate at about 15. And then, as they grow, as they've had the nurturing, as they've learned all the necessary skills to survive, and also the mother, the matriarch, has taught them how to take care of them when they were young, and they see all the various different stages. How do you take care of a baby? They become wonderful mothers themselves. So that's the ideal world. Sadly, we have to move into the real world. And this is the real world of Indonesia, Sumatra, and Borneo today. As you can see to the left of the picture, I was trying to get a pointer, but I can't seem to do it. To the left of the picture in the mound is what is happening with the remainder of what the rainforest used to look like. So this is the real world in which we're living, in which they are living. To the right and all surrounding the area that is built up are now palm tree fields, plantations. And what is so interesting about it is that I will read it to you, you just take a look. There's no other crop that can yield even a third as much oil per acre that's planted. So along with using less land, the oil palm gobbles up significantly fewer pesticides and chemical fertilizer than coconut, corn, or any other vegetable oil source. So there's a catch-22 here in the fact that we have so many familiar foods in our supermarkets that have palm oil in their ingredients. And at the same token, it's destroying conservation and these beautiful animals that live there. And the fact is that the Indonesian government is more concerned about money than they are about conservation. They have a whole series of conservation guidelines that have been developed. The only problem was that the Indonesian government wouldn't agree to a timeline as to when they would be followed. So this is an idea of what the palm oil plantations have done to what was so beautiful. And what was also there, if you take a look to, again, the mound, all the trees that were part of the rainforest, and they've been decimated to start these palm oil plantations. So we're going to take a look at some of the foods, everyday foods, that have palm oil in them. So if you just take a look at the left-hand side, and you see that all of these different things that are on the shelf of your supermarket are loaded with palm oil. Each item contains about 50% palm oil. And to the right, oops, sorry, woo, going back. To the right over here, you'll see that those are palm oil, whatever, kernels or fruits, sorry, fruits. So then we move on again to the catch-22, don't palm us off. So it's a very hard dilemma. You know, conservationists just can't get through to people with not necessarily, you know, hearts. Money means everything. So this is where we come to this story. This is a rescue center for traumatized baby infants. They have been traumatized and most often depressed because their mothers have been shot down from trees. Land has been decimated, trees have, you know, been felled, and these little babies have been torn away from their mothers. Now, as we talk about this, we know that one orangutan has 3 births within a lifetime. Look at how many little orphans there are. Some of the thousands of rescued infants are these that were lucky to be saved. Despite being rescued, they're depressed. And the problem is, how much money is there to take care of them? And these little faces are just so precious, and we will get a little further on to see what actually happens, you know, to them, those that have not been rescued. They're so tiny, and they've been taken away from their mothers, as I said before, and they put them together for the warmth of their bodies and for their emotional needs. And some of them don't ever come out of it because they were so attached. You could see the relationship between mother and baby. You can see how tiny they are. They're wearing diapers. This is what we're going to take a look at next. And they go to a jungle school to learn the skills that their mothers taught them all the way up through age 4, which is the ability to climb. And I'm going to show you a video now, just a short one, about the jungle school. And I want you to really look at the baby in this photo, in this video, and see how he relates to the people that are there and the other orangs. A minute. They actually have to be taught by people how to climb. This would not be a skill that they would have needed had they been able to stay with their mothers. So, main threats to the orang's survival. Man, the loss of habitat through deforestation, palm oil plantations, illegal hunting, poaching, and sadly, the people who work on these plantations are not taken care of very well. There's a lot of abuse that goes on. They don't have food. So what do? They go out to the rainforest areas and they kill mother orangutans. Mother orangutans are killed for a couple of reasons. It can be bushmeat. It can also be that they kill them just so they can take the babies, and the babies are then sold on the black market, illegal pet trade. And then the Chinese come in and they're building hydroelectric plants, and not only in Sumatra, but many places in the world. So we go, loss of life is not due to refusal to wear masks or because they're frequenting bars. They're truly victims. Oops, let me go back a minute. There are other endangered animals that live also on Sumatra, and they are the clouded leopard, all facing extinction. Sumatran tiger, the pygmy elephant and rhino, Sumatran rhino, very few left. The sun bear and the proboscis monkey. There's also a bat, but I didn't think you'd be interested in seeing the bat. So all of them face the same thing. They're smuggled out of the islands, and with Indonesian government probably closing their eyes. There have been national parks and refuges that have opened to protect these animals. And these animals live in the south area where the Tapanuli orangutans live. And it's a very, very small area. It's about the size of London, and they all coexist. So you say, you put them in reserve. Well, a lot of these animals, meaning the clouded leopard, a lot of them are in zoos. And I do have to say one thing, that these animals are not taken out of the wild to go into accredited zoos. That doesn't happen. The only place that these animals go is on the illegal black market trade. And many of them wind up in Asia for medicinal reasons or as trophies for very, very rich people, and other illicit things that sadly happen to them. So we're going to go back here again and take a look at the map. You saw it before, where the red areas were areas where the orangutans remain. But over 80% of the habitat has been consumed from 1999 through 2015. The UN estimation is that 6,000 great apes, or orangutans, chimps, and gorillas, are captured each year and sold for a pet market. Of all of them, 70% are baby orangutans, because they're so cute, but they grow. The orang population, most traded primate in the world, 4,000 are trapped and sold annually on the black market for about 45,000 per animal. Again, the Indonesian government is choosing financial gain of plantations over conservation and closing their eyes to smuggling. Okay. Please help to protect us, is what they would say to you. I hope this talk has opened your eyes and your hearts and brought you further awareness of the plight that these special mammals face. Awareness is knowledge, and the need to conserve their lives is essential for their futures. Thank you for listening.
So one question that we've had is, can orangutans have twins?
That I didn't research. I do know that gorillas can. I'm not sure in the wild. That's one thing I don't know. We could find out. The other thing I did want to say, someone asked a question the last time about whether any of these animals can have epilepsy or any of the kind of problems that we have as humans. The answer is yes. It's not common, but it does happen. So I wanted to give that information. Somebody could look up on their iPhones quickly to see if orangutans have twins. You can answer the question. Nick, any other questions?
Yes. Well, thank you for following up on the epilepsy and the human shared diseases.
Right. Well, okay, the other thing I wanted to say, which I didn't say the last time about human diseases, Henry, we always have Henrys. Henry, come on, the the male, the male hippo. Okay, at the zoo, the father wound up having an intestinal infection, and it was too late to save him. So they die of things, that we do. And of course, if any of you were not there during the last talk, many gorillas we've spoken about, have been dying, young gorillas, of heart issues, based on the fact that they do not in captivity have the same type of access to these anti-inflammatories that they do in the wild. And it's believed that that may be the missing link to their diets that are, not keeping them alive. Yes, I'm waiting.
I
checked that orangutans have twins, but very rarely.
That's the same thing with gorillas, very rarely. Yeah. I would like to invite Irene Randolph to speak for a moment, because she and Dan, they have amazing adventures, but they actually went on a trip to Borneo and saw live orangs. And I'd like her to talk to you about it for just a moment. Yeah, I mean, really special. And they also went to Africa and saw, mountain gorillas up close. So Irene, you would want to come on and just say something?
We went to Borneo 3 years ago, and then we went on to see Komodo dragons from there, because it's all kind of in the same sort of area. It was amazing. We were able to get very close to the orangs. We were on a riverboat. There were just 6 people and a crew. And so then we took a smaller boat off of the riverboat to get within really just probably 6 to 8 feet from the orangutans. They like to come close to the water. And so they swing and they eat and they play with each other. It's quite nice. We were there for a week watching them. We did go to a conservation center. They took us. It was very depressing, I have to say. They do try to reintroduce them to the wild. It's not always feasible. They may have injuries. Some of them are missing a hand. They're sometimes have been in a trap, and so they could be missing a body part. And so then they stay. But any of them that they can reintroduce, they do. What Sandy was showing, they teach them how to interact and how to climb and how to swing. And the food is often the biggest problem. They often will have radio monitors on so that they're making sure that they don't die from starvation or something, or other things. Again, trapping is a problem. Illegal traps. The leg hold traps are very scary. But yes, we also did go to Africa for mountain gorillas and also lowland gorillas on a different trip. We're big animal lovers, you can probably tell. And so if there are not animals involved, we don't really want to go. But I would really recommend going either to Sumatra or Borneo and also to Africa to do the gorillas. There's nothing like being touched by a mountain gorilla on your tushy by a silverback's hand. You can't touch them, but they can touch you. And they do touch you. The one that was, yes. Yes, just very recently, the one who touched both of us was killed illegally. I don't know if you read that in Uganda. That was actually the troop that we were with, 2 different troops, and he was the one who touched us. They're very big, to say the least. And they're babies. The father gorillas actually are quite good parents. They let the babies climb all over them. And it's very interesting to be with them. It's very different from the orangutans, who really do leave, and you don't see the males together with the females and the babies. They have one job, and that's it. Just
And
reproduction.
they're very trusting, the mountain gorillas. That's
Right.
what they're, yeah, I call them gentle giants. And
They
that's
have
so sad.
they have been habituated. They're not tame. So the word really, I really mean habituated. They have people that stay with them, and usually 1 to 2 years. And so they're just used to humans. And again, you're only permitted to stay for an hour anytime you go out each day. And you do have gun bearers with you. We had quite a little entourage. There were only 4 guests, I guess you could call us, and we had at least 2 people with AK-47s that were loaded. They do not hit or kill or shoot at the gorillas. They just shoot into the air. They've never had to kill a gorilla. The one that I mentioned was actually killed by a trap and not by a person. And the men they're all men who are the people who do the habituation. That's not true about the gun bearers. The gun bearers are women sometimes. They're pretty hardcore women. They're very interesting women. And I'm moving around here. But with the orangutans, they're habituated, but you don't you don't walk in the jungle with them, because they really are, they live in the trees, as Sandy said, and they live by the water. When you're in the conservation centers, then of course you can interact with them. And they like people. They want to interact with people. They're very interested, just as the gorillas are.
But
The lowland,
finish, go ahead.
oh no, the lowland gorillas, like they have at the Cincinnati Zoo, are very difficult to see, which is funny because they're called lowland gorillas, but they live in the trees. But mountain gorillas live on the earth. And so it's kind of odd. It's very difficult. We went to the Congo to see lowland gorillas, and we hardly ever saw any, because they hide in the trees. That's all. They throw things at you, but that's always fascinating. But that's all. Sorry, I would go on and on. Primates very interesting.
I started to say, with all the deforestation and the poaching that's going on, with Sumatra being not a very big place at all, even with all those little babies that are being taught how to climb and learning more social skills with one another. Where can they go? There isn't that much land to be able to put them back into a natural setting. And when you think that the population is also smaller, because a mother can only have 3 births in a lifetime, and so that and then to see how many of those babies have, again, many of them been killed, many of them can't be found, and the lucky ones were in these rehabilitation centers.
It's interesting what, I don't know about Sumatra, but Borneo and Africa have often hired former poachers to be guards. And they're usually because they're not afraid. They're also, to be honest, they're not afraid to do something sometimes that may not be so nice. We've heard stories.
They've also been given education and monetary compensation. Because a lot of this with selling these animals is because, they're given money for food. And if they become part of this whole conservation team, then they make their money that way. And then
absolutely. It's huge.
Others in their villages to, to understand conservation and try to save these animals. I know we're talking a lot about animals and, the pandemic and the situation we're right now with people all over this world. But they too, were part of our evolutionary tree, where man came, and, sometimes I think maybe they had more sense and heart than some people today. So. Now that is the end of my presentation. And again, it's constant learning, and it's wonderful learning. And yes, it's extremely time consuming, but if you enjoy what you're doing, the hours just go by. So I learned a great deal more about the animals. In fact, when Irene told me that she was going to be on today, I went and I looked more, Irene, about the Bornean orangutans, and where at one time, you know, they were not as endangered as the Sumatran. When you think of between 1999 and 2015, 100,000 of them are gone. They become critically endangered. So even though that map showed you how much space there is, well, that space is not forest anymore. So if anybody is interested in moving on to part 3 at some time, which would be another amazing group of animals, chimpanzees and bonobos, very different from each other. Going back to Africa, these, I don't remember saying, but orangutans are the only apes that are originally from Asia. Man and the gorillas and the chimpanzees and the bonobos are all African creatures. So it makes them very, very unique animals.
Well, Sandy, thank you so much again for this amazing, wonderful, informative presentation. Really, really, really fun and meaningful to listen to.
Thank you.
Yes.
Really fun. I'll tell you one thing, doing all this has kept me away from the television and the news, and it has been a joy.